and gain benefit from this online seminar. Now I hand you over to our District 71 Public Relations Manager, Elizabeth Jordan. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, District Director, fellow Toastmasters and distinguished guests and friends from around the world. Thank you for coming to our first D71 seminar. It's my honor to introduce Mark Snow. I first heard Mark 2-3 years ago through my good friend and our mutual friend, Julie Catet. And when I heard Mark, I knew I had heard someone very special. Mark has a distinction of obtaining the first Pathways DTM in the world. He also completed all 11 paths. And as if that wasn't enough, he's soon to get a third DTM. So we know we are in the presence of greatness. Since joining Toastmasters in Australia 6 years ago, Mark has held various leadership positions. And currently he is on the district leadership team of D69, where he is the program quality director. Outside of Toastmaster, he has a very interesting life. He's a government financial analyst. He's an avid theatre goer, history buff, and a wine enthusiast, a man after my own heart. We are delighted to have him with us today to inspire us and share his passion for Pathways with us. His speech title is almost a call to action: how to take your Pathways journey to new heights. So with a presentation entitled, How to Take Your Pathways Journey to New Heights, let's give Mark a D71 hearty and warm welcome. Over to you, Mark.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And thank you, District 71, for sharing your afternoon with me today. It's the middle of winter over here in Australia, which means that, as I said, it gets down to about 18 degrees and no lower. So for us, it's what passes for winter. But it's wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to be able to sort of talk about Pathways, which is a program that I have so much fondness for, and it's one that I've sort of turned inside and out over the last few years and have pulled apart in different ways and gained so much from. I myself have earned Distinguished Toastmaster Awards in both the Pathways program and the traditional program. And I can honestly say, having worked through both programs, that I've gained so much more quickly through the Pathways program than I ever did earning a DTM in traditional. And I'll explain that as we go through. Now, as fellow Commonwealth members, we like to keep things fairly informal, so we're not going to be too uptight today. So feel free to, if you do have any questions, just pop them into the chat or send them over to Steve, who's keeping an eye on things for me. If there's anything that we need to address as we go, we can do that. Otherwise, there'll be time at the end and we can tackle everything then. But hopefully I can answer all of your questions as we go. And again, just demonstrate Pathways, not just what it's all about, but how to make the most of that journey, how to make our Toastmasters program work for you, and how to go back to your clubs and help your members make the most of it too, because it is, as of the 1st of July, it is our only Toastmasters education program. And so being able to make the most of it means that as members, we can take our growth to new heights as well. So let's start with a question, and something I'd like all of you to sort of ponder is, why are you here? Fundamentally, why are you in Toastmasters? For some of us, we come to Toastmasters because we want to build our self-confidence. For others, it's all about public speaking. Sometimes we want to really just get good at dealing with other people. As an introvert myself, I hate people. my natural inclination is to just sort of lock myself away in a room. And Toastmasters has been a wonderful way for me to overcome that and be able to talk to you even just here today, which is fantastic. But then we have people who come for more professional reasons as well. They want to invest in their career. They want to get some runs on the board on their resume. They want to get some practice in leading teams and leading organizations so they can take that back to the real world where they can make the most of it. But just for me now, just pop it in the chat. Why are you here? What do you want out of Toastmasters? What can Toastmasters do for you? So just pop it into the chat and we'll see what comes up. Because everyone, as I say, comes to Toastmasters for different reasons. And Pathways is a phenomenal program in that it allows us, regardless of our interests and our goals, to find something that we can learn. So Julie, I'll pay you later for that, to meet people like me. So we have people wanting to gain confidence and gaining leadership skills, people overcoming their introversion to become professional speakers. So we've got a really good range, even just in those few comments that are coming through. Finding voice, networking. And it's one of the things that comes through for me is none of these were any different when we had the traditional program. Pathways hasn't changed any of those reasons that we're here in Toastmasters, but it gives us, in my opinion, more ways to achieve those goals if we know how to make the most of it. So that's what we're going to sort of go through. Now, Pathways can do so much. Like, what I love about the program compared to the program that we used to have is that it's much more rooted in the real world. In the traditional program, it was very easy to sort of get stuck into just doing manuals over and over again and not really going out and practicing those skills or using those skills in the real world. Whereas with Pathways now, the whole model of the education program is fundamentally, here's the theory, so read the theory, go out, practice the skill, reflect, present, receive the feedback, and keep growing. Now that's a powerful model, because if you do that over and over again, if you think about going to a gym, and I haven't been to a gym in quite a while since we've been in lockdown, and it's starting to show, I've got to admit. So my apologies for that. But if you go to a gym and you go through that same process, so you take the time to have a go at something, to learn, to make the most of it and keep growing, you're going to see some really big improvements over time. Whereas if you pay your membership and your gym membership and you don't go to the gym, and we see that a lot of times, if you just pay your membership and you don't go, well, you're not going to get those big Arnold Schwarzenegger muscles, which I will never, ever have, frankly. But that's the point, is Pathways, like Toastmasters always has been, it's all about getting in, having a go. But like I said, it's where how do we get started? Because Pathways is very flexible. Every project in the program can be done outside of Toastmasters. Previously, there was a limitation, but Pathways now encourages us to find real world projects, to go out there, to use those skills and practice them in the real world so that we're applying what we're learning. We're not just doing it in isolation. We're actually gaining skills and confidence outside of Toastmasters as well. There are so many stories of people who have used their skills, because we think about some of the projects, like a high performance leadership project. We might do it on a Toastmasters event. We think about doing a keynote speech and we might do something at, again, a Toastmasters event. But I'll tell you a couple of stories of members that I know who have been working through the Toastmasters, the Pathways program, and have really taken on the challenge of taking those skills outside of Toastmasters and really making them work. Now, a friend of mine, Michelle, and Julie Cortez will know Michelle Alberlim, is a Toastmaster from the west coast of the United States in Oregon. She's also originally from the Philippines. Now, she's taken her Pathways experience and a number of the projects that she's been working on and has poured that into a charity that she's involved in, just helping like a local women's group to empower them to change their lives for the better. And she's using the Pathways projects to teach her the skills, or give her the ability to go out and use those skills in the real world. We have other members that have taken their Pathways projects and they have gone out and they have run professional events, they've run professional speaking events, they've taken those skills and they've done something really cool with them outside of their club. They haven't just held on to it. So that's what Pathways can do. it'll go as far as you want it to go. And I really hope that you take it as far as you can. Well, that brings us to that age-old question, how do I choose the right path for me? Because there's 11 of them. They're all very different. They all sort of have a different range, from the very communication, public speaking end of the spectrum, all the way through to a very leadership end of the spectrum. And there's a lot of choice. And I mean, when I go to the supermarket and I walk through the aisles and I see 11 different types of jam, I get a little bit perplexed. I don't know which type of jam I want. Do I want the local one? Do I want blackberry? Do I want apricot? Do I want marmalade? Do I want some crazy fruit that I've never heard of before? I don't know. Sometimes the choice can be overwhelming, and that can be a barrier for all of us and for our members as well. And Samir's got it just right, analysis paralysis. So I just want to jump in now, and I'll share my screen and sort of break down, in a sense, how you can sort the different paths when you're thinking about a path that you want to pick, but also when you're thinking of or talking to another member and helping them go through that process of selecting a path. So let's have a look-see. So here we go. When you break it all down, you can group the 11 pathways paths into 4 different categories based on effectively what sort of skills you're looking to grow. Now, the first category is public speaking. So the presentation mastery path, the engaging humor path. If you just want to learn how to speak well and write speeches, give a really great presentation in front of a crowd, go along and pick one of those 2 paths, because that's what they do, and they do it really well. In each of these paths, all 11, you have your core projects, and in the public speaking paths, the level 5 project in each of those is a 20-minute keynote. So for presentation mastery, it's a generic style keynote presentation. In engaging humor, it's a humorous 20-minute style presentation. But each of those levels in the path builds up to that. So you start with all the fundamentals in level 1, which is the same for all paths. And then we build up into the more advanced presentation skills until we get to that point where we're delivering a 20-minute presentation. And for some people, that's the most they're going to have spent talking in front of a crowd in their life. And that's great, because that's what we're here to do. We're not just learning to become better Toastmasters and to be speaking in front of Toastmasters for the rest of our lives, as wonderful as Toastmasters are and as great conversation as we are. We don't come to Toastmasters to just be better Toastmasters. We come to Toastmasters so we can get out there in the real world and do something with those skills. So the public speaking quadrant is a great place to start for people who want to go down that path, so to speak. Then we move across to the small projects one. So there are 3 paths where the specific projects in those paths really lend themselves to working on like building a small team or just putting together a bit of a plan and doing a bit of a project. So if you want to learn some of those skills, so the leadership development path, the motivational strategies path, the visionary communication path, the projects in this path are going to get you out doing things. So they may be with a small team or just by yourself, just getting you out there doing something to develop practical management leadership skills, and gradually over time, work your way up to some more project-based level 5 projects. So again, depending on what you want to know. So leadership development's out how to develop other people. Motivational strategies, it's how can I get the most out of my team and really get them fired up to do what they want. And that's not just in a commercial or a corporate sense, but it's maybe I'm in a volunteer organization and I'm dealing with volunteers, or I'm trying to motivate my teenage child to get out of bed in the morning. I mean, for those of you that have teenage children, I've heard it's quite difficult. My father tells me that all the time, that it was very difficult to get me out of bed once upon a time. Or visionary communication, where your project is to develop your vision for the next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. It's very exciting stuff. Like, these are skills and projects that we didn't have in the traditional program, but we've got them now in Pathways. And that's really, really exciting stuff. So if we come down to the bottom left, we've now got the leading teams. And so dynamic leadership, strategic relationships, team collaboration, those 3 paths is all about how do I work better with a small team? How do I find that point of engaging, organizing, motivating, planning, connecting with my team and encouraging them to really grow. So dynamic leadership, it's how do we fire up the team, not in the motivational sense, but how do we really engage them and get them going? Strategic relationships is about networking and building those connections with other people that you can then take back and use in whatever environment. Toastmasters is a phenomenal networking organization. We have 300,000+ members around the world, and you can find anyone in Toastmasters. We have, I know a Toastmaster who is a taxidermist. So if I ever want to have someone stuffed and mounted on my mantle, I can get mates rates on that, which, you know, is always a useful person to know. But then you've got lawyers, you've got business people, you've got people from all sorts of walks of life, and knowing how to connect with them and develop a relationship there is a wonderful skill in and of itself. You can take it literally anywhere. And then team collaboration, it's how can we build cohesiveness in our team and work better together as a cohort. So that's that quadrant there. If you want to develop those skills, those really sort of management style skills, leading teams might just be your jam. And then we come across to the fourth quadrant, which is holistic leadership. And it's really developing those sort of self-leadership skills where we're developing other people. The level 5 projects in these 3 parts is a HPL, a high performance leadership project, where you are getting stuck into a really involved kind of project. Now, effective coaching is all about coaching skills. And again, you can use that in any environment, not just in a corporate sense, but also dealing with other people, just being able to have a conversation and help them find a new place or find a new direction in life. Innovative planning is if you're someone like me who sometimes struggles to get organized, if you're not a list person, if you sort of find yourself, you know, running against the clock every now and again, innovative planning might just be for you, because it's all about being organized, managing time better, checklists, getting your life under control. And again, that's not just in a corporate sense, but just getting your own life under control has a lot of benefits, particularly if you live a very busy one too. And then finally, we've got persuasive influence, because again, we go through life, we deal with people. The moment you have someone that you want to do something who doesn't want to do what you want them to do, you have to apply that art of persuasion. And being able to develop those skills will help you when it comes to anything. And so you think, when we're thinking about paths, selecting paths for ourselves, when we're thinking about helping other members select a path, this is a great way to just break down the choices and make it a little bit easier. Right? When I think about 11 choices, it's scary, but if I only have to pick between 2 or 3, then suddenly it's a lot more meaningful. It's a lot easier for me to make a decision because I'm not dealing with such a big amount of information. Which brings us, of course, then to, you know, when is the best time to do this? I mean, we talk about pathways a lot in Toastmasters, and it's something that in some ways can be just a little bit too much. So for example, and there we go. The best time to have these conversations with our members is at the right stage of the journey. I've walked into clubs before where a guest walks into the room and they just get bombarded with Pathways information. It's like, oh yeah, you should totally join Toastmasters. We have this thing called Pathways, and you've got base camp, and there's 11 parts, and they do this and they do that, and you have to dial in here, and it's just blah, 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 blah. Information overload. Like if I'm a guest walking through the door, that's not what I need to know right now. What I need to know is Toastmasters for me? Do I have confidence in the Toastmasters program? And do I think it's going to help me achieve my goals? And that's the first part. When we look at this member step of the guest to member journey, the member step is where that happens. When we're trying to convert someone into being a member, they don't need to know all of the messy details about how Pathways works. They don't need to know everything at this point about the questionnaires, about this, about that. They just need to know enough to make a decision to join Toastmasters. The next step, that Toastmaster step, so once someone has signed the form and they've become a Toastmaster, this is where we start to have the more detailed conversations. That's where we schedule an orientation with that new member and we sit down and we walk them through. Now, I know in a lot of my clubs that I've attended in my district, it used to be, certainly in the traditional program as well, you would pay your money to a club, sign the form, hand it all over, you'd receive your manuals in the mail, and then you'd basically be forgotten about. You just get left to your own devices because we sort of assumed that you just read the manual and understand everything. You just pick it up by osmosis. And funnily enough, that didn't really work. What Toastmasters International has found is statistically about 40% of new members around the world never renew. So think about that. Of all the new members that you sign up to your club, 40% of them will not renew again. And a large part of that, in my mind, is because that first few months of a Toastmasters journey doesn't happen as it should. The Pathways orientation, the new member orientation, is a critical part of retaining new members and helping them get started. And so if we are sitting down with a new member, if we're asking them about what they want to get out of Toastmasters, just like we discussed before, all of the reasons that we're here, if the VP sits down and walks them through, well, okay, here are the different paths, here is what might suit you, let's have a talk through. That member, that new member, is much more likely to stay because they have a goal. They know why they're here, they know what they're doing, and they're going to be chasing down a goal. It could be their first 4 speeches. It could be a Distinguished Toastmaster Award. It could be to be the next world champion of public speaking. You never know. But unless someone sits down with that new member and walks them through the program and explains how all of this works, they're not going to stay. And with Pathways, orientation is more important than ever before now. It's a non-negotiable for my clubs. Is if a new member comes in, they have to be shown what to do. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. And so we find ourselves in just a really interesting sort of point of call. But what I love about Pathways is that what we've been doing in our clubs historically is already carried over into the new program. And one of the things that I hear a lot is that Pathways is too different. It's just not the same as the old program. It's just, I don't know where all of the things that I used to do fit in this new world. And that's fine. I mean, it is new. And it's giving ourselves that permission to not know everything. And it's something that we've found certainly with our longer term members as well, is that, you know, we've known the traditional program for 6, 7, 10, 15, 20 plus years. And I have members in my district that have been around in Toastmasters for over 50 years. And they've been familiar with that program. And they know that in and out. So over time, we're going to know Pathways the same way. It's going to be easier over time because more people will get familiar with it. But it's giving ourselves that permission to just sort of say, you know what, we don't have all the answers right now, but we know where to find them. But the first part in helping our new members or helping any member get on board with Pathways is showing them the connection. So here is what you do in a club, and here's how it connects to what you're already doing. So for example, if I am smarter than I look, here, for instance, is a simple comparison. When historically, we would have people that someone might drop out of a club meeting and someone may have to step up and give a speech at short notice. And it would be a case of, okay, cool, pull out your manual, we'll find a project to connect it to. So if you're just giving any sort of speech, there are so many Pathways projects that you can connect it to. And now that all of the levels in Pathways are unlocked, you don't have to do them all in order. You don't have to start at level 1 and work through to level 5. It certainly helps if you do level 1 first. But you can pick a project from any level and do it if the opportunity pops up. So if you're just giving a speech in a club meeting, any level 1 project would probably fit that project, would fit that speech. And same with level 3. Most of your level 3 speeches, level 3 electives will fit your generic style speech because of everything around understanding body language and vocal variety and inspiring your audience and connecting with your audience. That's all in level 3. They're all electives. So if you're giving a speech, you can tick off a lot of those level 3 projects fairly quickly. If you are a topics master in a club meeting, you're fulfilling the requirement for the level 3 project, active listening, without doing anything extra. And again, if it's a way to encourage your members to get on board with Pathways, it's like, hey, you're topics master tonight, make sure you get your level 3 project signed off. And it's helping your members work their way through this program by showing them the links. Now, if you are a club or a district officer, and I'm a district officer this year, and I imagine many of you are also club officers or district officers as well, the level 5 elective project, leading in your volunteer organization, is perfect for that. So again, if you are a club officer, pull out level 5, pull out that project, leading in your volunteer organization, get started on it, because by the end of your year as a club officer, you've probably completed a couple of Pathways levels without even trying. And that's a strategy for all of us, is knowing where to find the projects, but also understanding how much easier it is, or making it easy for our club members too, because they might feel lost, but if you can show them, you're topics master tonight, you can tick off that project there in level 3. You're sergeant arms in our club, make sure you get your level 5 project started, and you'll have that finished in 6 months. Now, at the moment, a lot of our clubs are still meeting online via Zoom, or again, if you're running a club executive meeting online, level 4 project, manage online meetings, tick that one off. And the same if you are a contest chair or you're organizing a club event, there's a number of Pathways projects that will fit that requirement very, very well. And so the point with this whole conversation is to really understand that what we used to do in the traditional program hasn't disappeared. It's still in Pathways. It's just knowing where to find it now. And if we know where to find it, then life continues on almost the same as it was before Pathways, but it's making that journey, that transition, easier for our members. Now, Pathways, as I said, is a great program. It can do so much for different people. It has a lot more on offer in terms of projects. So again, whether you want to be, if you're in because you want to develop your self-confidence, if you want to develop your career, if you want to develop your communication skills, there's so much going on there to help you to grow. But it's giving, again, our members those goals. Now, we had earlier, I can't remember the fellow's name, but he was talking about working towards his Distinguished Toastmaster Award. And now in the traditional program, everyone sort of knew what you needed to do for a DTM. It was, you finished the communication track and you finished the leadership track, and bam, DTM just sort of dropped out the end. In Pathways, it's slightly more different, but at the same time, it's not as difficult to understand. It still has a logic to it, which makes it easy for people to, or hopefully easier for people to understand. So I'm just going to pull up a document. And this was something that I drafted up for my members when I was the chief ambassador for my district. We rolled out slightly ahead of Europe. But sometimes just breaking it down into steps makes it easy. And I love flowcharts. As Elizabeth said, I'm a financial analyst. If I can put it into a list or a flowchart or a spreadsheet, I am happy. If it can't go into either of those, it's just too messy and something needs to be changed. But let's break down that path to a DTM, because we have an increasing number of DTMs now in the Pathways program, and I'd really love to see more of them popping up all over the place. Because yeah, it's a great goal to work towards. And it's not about earning so much the award, because being a DTM doesn't mean that you are the best speaker or the best leader or the most confident person on earth. It really doesn't. But in the process of becoming a DTM, you gain exposure to a lot of different elements. You practice a lot of skills, you meet a lot of people, you try out a lot of different things, and you grow from that experience. You gain that confidence and you gain that worldliness. And so the Distinguished Toastmaster Award recognizes that effort. And with that effort becomes experience, comes skill. But giving you that opportunity to learn and to grow is the big deal of being a DTM, certainly in the Pathways program. So once you join, there's a few different elements. There's 5. Now, the first bit is all about the paths. Now, if you are working towards a Distinguished Toastmaster Award, you finish level 5 in 2 paths. So 1 to 5 times 2, and then that's part of your requirement. So that's in the education column there. Once you've finished or partway through your second path, you can access a Distinguished Toastmaster project. Now, the point of this project, and again, this is where some of those earlier examples came from about working with a women's group or even putting on like a big World Speech Day, which a friend of mine in Singapore put on. The Distinguished Toastmaster project is almost like an advanced HPL. It's designed to give you an opportunity to bring the skills that you've been learning in those 2 paths together so that you can demonstrate what you've learned, but also really reflect on your journey in Toastmasters and your goals as a leader and as an individual. So if you do the 2 paths and the Distinguished Toastmaster project, that is one component of your Distinguished Toastmaster completed. And as we talked about before, if you're doing completing a lot of these projects in club already, you're probably a lot further towards completing that goal than you might realize. Now, the second component is club leadership. So serving as a club officer for 12 months. If you have been a club officer or you are a club officer now, congratulations, you are in the process of becoming a Distinguished Toastmaster. You are already 20% of the way to signing that off. So again, that's another tick in that box on your way. Now, if you are a district leader, so if you've served as an area director, division director, a trio or district executive member for a 12-month period, that's another tick in the box. So none of this has changed from the traditional program. What they've done is, rather than having a communication track and a leadership track, they've just separated it into a pathways track and an extracurricular kind of track, so that members can keep working through their pathways program without necessarily getting stopped by not being in a position to fulfill any of these leadership roles. So if you're a district officer, 12 months, congratulations, that's another tick towards becoming a Pathways DTM. Now, these last 2 components are where it gets slightly interesting and is slightly different from what the traditional program used to have. Now, historically, it used to be you would complete an Advanced Communicator Gold, and as part of that, you might do a Speechcraft course, a Youth Leadership course, a number of other workshop modules you had options for. And then on the leadership side, you had an Advanced Leader Silver Award, where you had to serve as a club sponsor, a club mentor, or a club coach. What Toastmasters have done is to separate those slightly. They've reordered them basically into two different functions. So it's club extension, and it's all about giving back to the organization that has given so much to you. So helping Toastmasters to grow and to expand its footprint and help more members or more people become members of our organization. So by serving as a club sponsor, you are creating a new club, bringing new members into the organization. Same with Speechcraft Youth Leadership, you are bringing more people into the Toastmasters universe, showing them skills and showing off what Toastmasters can do. And again, so if you have been a club sponsor before, a Speechcraft coordinator or a youth leadership coordinator, congratulations, that's one more tick in that box to becoming a DTM. So well done. And then the final one is club support, because Toastmasters is not just about going out and bringing new people in, but it's about supporting the clubs that we already have as well. And that's what this requirement is about. If you have served as a mentor to a new club or a coach to a struggling club, and you've done that successfully, that is the final tick that you need in the box to becoming a DTM. And so when you look at this list, a lot of it is 90% the same of what we've historically done. But now you've got that flexibility to really chase it down in any order. So if you are a district officer today, you can tick off that requirement without having to work your way through a path. You still need to do the path eventually, but you can do it at your own pace and at a time that suits you. It really makes things a lot easier. And it's a journey I really encourage you to take, because, as I said, just Toastmasters does so much for people. Like we are such a broad organization. We have people from all walks of life. Toastmasters really changes lives. And when I first joined, I was a shy, anxious, introverted accountant. I could barely look another person in the face. And to the idea of stepping up and even talking in front of all of you tonight, or today as it is for you, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, petrified me, would have absolutely petrified me. But 6 years of Toastmasters is the difference. Like, Toastmasters does so many wonderful things. And again, you know, I've seen members that come in, and you've probably seen them as well, members that come into your clubs, they get a taste of Toastmasters, they sit down, have a mentor, someone shows them what to do, and suddenly their life changes. You know, maybe it's they get that job that they were sort of angling for, or someone sees something in them that they hadn't seen before and they find a new career path, who knows? But by jumping into this program, this Pathways program, you can take your life in directions that you never really planned, but it gives you that space, that safe space to play around with things that you might not have otherwise thought of. So Pathways is a wonderful, wonderful program. Now, for those of you that are really keen on public speaking and want to just really focus all your attention there, you can do that. For those of you that want to build your career and take your professional journey in new directions, you can do that too. If you want to build your self-confidence and stop being a shy, anxious, introverted accountant, you can do that too. And if you want to take your journey to other parts of the world and learn how to deal with new cultures and meet people and just develop new friendships, you can do that too. Pathways is a program for anyone. Like, anyone can make the most of this program, but it's understanding how they can do that which makes all the difference. So with that, I'm going to show you one last resource, because again, it's not enough for you to just listen to me, because frankly, you know, even I get sick of listening to me after a while, but it's understanding not just what to do, but also where to find help. Now, there are some wonderful resources out there if you are looking for support. There is the Pathways discussion forum on Facebook. It is a huge resource. If you post questions into there, you will get answers almost straight away. It's a wonderful, wonderful resource. The Toastmasters International website has some wonderful documents as well. And there are YouTube videos and documents that are running around the world. People from members that have created them, just breaking everything down, showing how Pathways works, and just making it all easy to understand. And so with that, I'm going to leave you with a simple thought that what we do today, the choices that we make, the actions that we take today, will determine all of the tomorrows that are yet to come. And so if we choose today to engage with our program, to embrace the change, to embrace the new, and to stretch ourselves in new directions, then our tomorrows are going to look really, really interesting and a lot more vibrant than they would have otherwise been. So I encourage all of you to make the most of this Toastmasters journey. It's your journey. You can take it wherever you want to go, and Pathways is the vehicle that will help you get to whatever your goals are. So with that, thank you so much for everything that you contribute to our organization, not just your fellow members, but by being active members yourself, you are being the best of what Toastmasters is all about, and you would make Rouse Smedley so proud. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Elizabeth or Steve for questions, and we'll go from there. So thank you so much, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Okay, Gaia, I'm going to suggest that we ask everyone to unmute themselves and just give Mark a hearty round of applause, which he so well deserves. So can we do that first of all?
Yes,
Mark.
definitely. So if everybody can unmute, well done. Thank you, Mark, for the amazing journey. Thank you very much.
Good job, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and then we can now,
Awesome.
you can invite the chat monitor to start asking Mark the questions that are in the chat. And we can all mute ourselves again. So, and Mark
Yes,
can.
please.
So
Thank you, Elizabeth, and Mark. Thank you for your great presentation. Certainly shared a lot of information with us. We had lots of engagement in the chat, lots of good questions. I've tried to group them into themes. So if you bear with me, I'll just start. But one of my first questions is, you presented lots of very useful slides and documents as you were going through. Is there any chance you'd be able to share those with us?
Oh,
Because
absolutely.
I'm sure lots of people would value that. Thank you. So I think
Yep.
Elizabeth and Mark, if you can work out how to get that to us, that would be very helpful indeed. Thank you. So we had a few questions to do with guiding people and planning projects when you were talking about orientation. VJ asked that he normally connects with new members and guides them in what to do. You were suggesting different types of projects, and he said, should he guide people to use small projects first as a way of getting started and then try and do some of the others?
That's a good question. And a lot of it, I think, comes down to what does your new member want to learn? I mean, level 1 is really useful in that it covers all the fundamentals. So how to introducing yourself to your club, how to prepare a presentation, how to receive and deliver feedback, which are the bread and butter of what Toastmasters does. But then after that, it's really up to you. Some of the projects are quite simple to do. Some of them may be more necessary for that member in the short term. So for instance, if you are disorganized like me, you might want to push them towards that time management project a little bit sooner than they would otherwise have naturally gotten to it. But I think fundamentally it's having a conversation with the member and just where they want to go first, but also what opportunities that they might have to be able to work on some of those projects just with naturally. So for instance, if they are already running online presentations, you may as well jump them into manage online meetings while they're doing it. So it's, yeah, I think just there's no real set way to do it. It's just whatever works best for those members.
That's excellent. Thank you. And actually skipping ahead into another question that we had was, can you do the project out of order? Can you do the level 3 project before you do the level 1 project? A few people asked about that. And
so related. Oh, sorry, you have to submit the levels in order. So you can't submit a level 3 before you submit the level 1 in the path, but you can do the projects at any time in any order.
Ah, wonderful. Thank you. And I think you just answered another question that someone else asked about how do these projects and levels work when it comes to distinguished club points if you're not necessarily doing them in the right order. So thank you very much for that. Another question we have from Jennifer was, she'd heard that it takes 18 months to complete a path. And that feels like quite a long time. And she was wondering, can you do it in 6 months? Is it possible to do it shorter? So what's your experience of how long it really takes someone to do a path?
I mean, it really comes down to how motivated someone is, to be honest. And I mean, there's so many different variables. It's, you know, how often does your club meet? How many speeches do they have on the program every meeting? How many clubs you're a member of? Just how many opportunities do you have to give or to complete projects outside of Toastmasters? So for example, as I said, historically, there was a limitation on the number of projects you could do outside of Toastmasters, but now there isn't any. So for instance, I'm a member of a corporate club, and one of my colleagues is a member in that. So every time I'm giving a work presentation, it's getting signed off in Pathways at the same time. And that helps quite a lot too. But yeah, fundamentally, I've been telling all of my area directors that if they play their cards right, and if they're giving presentations at club visits, if they are if they're running online council meetings, if they are holding a leadership role, they can finish a full path in 1 year, just by all of the work that they're doing as an area director. And I'm sure for club officers, there's a lot of similar opportunities as well. So it is just keeping an eye out for the opportunities and making the most of them as they come up.
That's great. Thank you. And that moves beautifully onto another question where Jennifer also asked, she's in a club with 20 new members, which is wonderful, but it's difficult to get slots to do projects and get them evaluated. Can she get them evaluated at work? And I suppose the subtle point is, does it have to be evaluated by a Toastmaster at work, or could it be evaluated by a colleague?
Has to be evaluated by a Toastmaster.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. And another a question from Paul, actually related maybe to the technology, is, in your view or experience, how good is the paper version of Pathways? How well does that tend to work for people?
The paper version is an interesting piece. It has limited options because a number of the Pathways projects are specifically around online things, so social media, so on, and that doesn't really suit a paper-based environment very well. It does cost a little bit more. It's still like dollar for dollar. a better deal than the manuals in the previous program. So if technology is a challenge, or if you're just someone who really likes the feel of a physical paper manual, you can go down that route. For me, I think the recommendation is more, if you take the digital route, you can always download that as a project, print it out and have it bound. And that gives you access to everything without having to pay the $25 US fee. And that to me probably gives you the best of both worlds.
And a follow-up question, actually, question from me is, how would you help someone who's less technologically advanced? I can think of members of my own club who don't use technology, don't use computers, and are kind of struggling with the transition. So how do you help those people?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We sort of, I mean, so District 69 was created a couple of years before District 71, which is why we have very close sequential numbers. And we have a number of long-term members in our district as well. And so we found just having members sit down and just work them through that process was really worthwhile. Like, one of the members in my district, I'm so proud of, she is 96. She is in the one club in Alice Springs that is smack bang in the middle of Australia. It is a 3-hour flight to the nearest club. She is 96 years old. She has finished level 2. She is half deaf, but she decided to have a go at it. And, the VP of the club sat down with her and helped her through it. But fundamentally, it's a case of, if the member's willing, anything's possible. And it is, I think, just taking the time to show them how, rather than just assuming that it will come naturally.
Okay, that's very helpful. I think it comes back to where you started, which is it's about personal motivation and personal interaction. So that's wonderful. If I can move on to a slightly different topic about how Pathways fits into club meetings, and a couple of people, both Wendy and Claire, have asked us about the Competent Leadership Manual and the projects associated with Competent Leadership Manuals. And how do you motivate members to take meeting roles now that that's not there? How do you engage people in those meeting roles in the absence of that structure?
Yeah, absolutely. That's in some ways, Pathways has given us more flexibility. So with Pathways now, the only required roles are Toastmaster, Topics Master, Speech Evaluator, because you have to complete those before you can advance past level 3. What that means, though, is that as clubs, we have flexibility now to play around with our meeting structures. And rather than having the same format that we might have used for years and years and years, we can actually tailor our clubs now a lot more to the needs of our members. I mean, one of the things that we've been really encouraging in my district is, so for instance, if you are a club full of young professionals, you might drop things like grammarian, or you might drop some of the less useful club meeting roles and put in some other segments around interview practice, or you might put in some guest speakers or just something that really suits that demographic. And then on the same side, if you had a club that was aimed at members who had English as a second language, for instance, or a third language or a fourth, you would absolutely put grammarian in there, but you might do it differently. So you can play around with your meeting structures to really suit the needs of your club and the goals of your club. So I'm thinking that going forward, we might hopefully see more variety in our club agendas to suit the different demographics. But in terms of the specific meeting roles, the Competent Leadership Manual was, statistically, it was 2% of members ever finished a Competent Leadership Manual. So it was a manual that was not being used to begin with, which is part of the reason Pathways came in. But fundamentally, part of being a club is that social contract. So I come along to a club and I give a speech, and I expect there to be someone to time me and someone to evaluate me and someone to introduce me and someone to critique my use of the language. Now, if I walk in as a member and expect that of my fellow members, then it's not unreasonable for those members to expect the same of me when they come in to give a speech. And it is just that social contract, that reciprocity that makes a club work. And I think fundamentally that's the conversation that needs to be had is, if we want these roles in the club, then we have to be prepared to play.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And actually, someone kindly shared in the chat links to the old Competent Leader manuals, because they can still be useful. They still have value. If I can move on, I'm conscious we've only got a few minutes left for these questions. And we had some more questions about kind of the higher level projects. So can you share a bit more about how the HPL and Pathways Mentor Program work within Pathways, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So The High Performance Leadership Project in the traditional program sat within the Advanced Leader Silver Award. It was quite an impressive manual, actually. The HPL was perhaps one of the best manuals that Toastmasters produced, in my opinion, at least anyways. I got a lot out of that journey. What Toastmasters have done now is the HPL, basically same format. It's now a required project in 3 of the paths, and it's an elective in the other 8. So members still have the opportunity to complete a HPL regardless of which path they are complete. But it's not the big standalone type project that it used to be anymore. Now, the Pathways mentoring program is something I really do love because, again, mentoring across clubs tends to be, can be inconsistent depending on the club. Like sometimes it gets done, sometimes people get forgotten about. It can really sort of be difficult. And no one historically really received a lot of training on how to do it. The TI materials historically on mentoring was, this is what mentoring is, this is why it's important. Now go out and figure it out for yourself. And we just sort of assumed that mentors would just naturally absorb some sort of magic energy when they became a mentor. And funnily enough, that didn't happen. What the Pathways Mentor program does is it steps people through that process of learning how to be a mentor. And it starts in level 2 with the Introduction to Mentoring project, where you get the perspective of being a protege and how to be mentored well by someone else, because it's a two-way street as a mentor and a protege. The level 3 project is Prepare to Mentor, and that doesn't involve anything apart from doing an assessment on yourself. You know, what are your strengths? What are you looking for in a protege? What are your boundaries? So it's getting you thinking in that mindset of being a mentor. Then the level 4 project is mentoring. And so you'll mentor another member through a project, just one. And that can be a small project. If you're a relatively new member mentoring someone else for the first time, you might just pick an icebreaker to mentor them through. If you're a DTM, you might mentor someone through a HPL or a level 5 project, depending on what they're up to. And that's fine. And that's, again, an opportunity to practice those mentoring skills. And then the level 5 project, Advanced Mentoring, is the real piece de resistance of the whole mentor program, where you mentor another person, can be a Toastmaster, can be someone else, for 6 months. And the resources and the tools and the templates in those projects to support that mentoring relationship are excellent. They are extraordinary. And that really gives you an opportunity to practice longer term mentoring, to sit down with someone, help them identify their goals, develop a plan, check in, and just keep working things through. And I mean, and you can mentor anyone around the world. I mentored someone who was a 2-hour flight away from me, and then someone who was on the other side of the world, and someone who was on the other side of my city. So you can mentor anyone, anywhere, but it's a great opportunity for you to develop those skills and to meet new people and learn a bit more about them. So yeah, that's highly recommended.
Thank you. And actually, Mark, related to that, we had a question from John and Fatima about how to support new members and how to support mentors. So to paraphrase, I think the answer is go look at the mentoring projects. I think that would be very useful. And then, conscious of time, I have time for just one more question. And if I may, for everyone else who's kindly sent us questions, the remainder of the questions were really about the rules around what counts and what doesn't count. So I'm imagining go look at the Toastmasters website for that. But yeah. Mark, just for you, one final question. When does the Distinguished Toastmaster project get unlocked, and how soon can people actually get started on that project?
Yeah, so the DTM project unlocks when you have finished level 5 in one path and level 3 in your second path. Now, it doesn't unlock automatically at the moment. As last I checked, there was still some working going in the background. But what you do need to do there is email off to World Headquarters, supply orders at toastmasters.org. Just let them know that you're up to that level, that, you know, can I please have access to the DTM project? And they will add it to your Pathways dashboard. And then you can jump into it and start working on it.
That's an extremely useful tip. Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone who asked questions. Mark, thank you for answering them all so wonderfully and succinctly. And I would now like to hand us back to, I believe Daniel's the next person up. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Mark. That's been absolutely, it's been an epiphany. It really has. It's been an epiphany for me. There are things in there that I can take away and use in my club tomorrow. I want your slide deck. I really want that mapping of roles from the old program into the new program. Do you know, for the last 2.5 years, 95% of the work my members have done to support club meetings has gone begging. It's just gone by. We haven't been able to make that connection. I want a timekeeper. Where do I get one from? Where do I link it in? That's been missing until now. And it's good that we can start to make those connections, and I can try to encourage my members to get the work that they're doing, social contract or otherwise, evaluated. And so they start seeing their progress in Pathways. Getting them to go into Basecamp to access the educational materials is another thing, but you can get the horses to water. It's just getting them to drink that can be hard. So thank you for that. And I'd really like to thank our Zoom crew for helping put this meeting together technically. Well done, Geroid, and particularly Gaia for Hostess Beyond Compare. I really love the energy you bring into our meetings, Gaia and Geroid. And of course, Elizabeth Jordan, I'd really like to congratulate our Public Relations Manager on building up this webinar series, on promoting this webinar series and linking in with her contacts to bring such A-list content to District 71. So I think that sums up all my accolades, and they're heartfelt and genuine and sincere. And I'd now like to wish you all a fantastic weekend, but more importantly, write up your notes and take them back to your clubs and make a difference. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. You doing a photo call, Elizabeth?
Actually, we haven't yet. It'd be brilliant to do one, actually. Yes, so thank you. Is that Gaia or Gerard who will do the photo call for us? Who will do the photo call for us?
Yeah, we can do it.
Yeah, please, thank you.
Yeah. So at my tree, we are going to have a smile. Okay. So ready? 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Cheese.
Have you got a photo?
Cheese. Almost. It's
Almost.
4 pages done. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we have, I think, exactly 2 minutes left. So once again, I want to thank Mark profusely for, I think Daniel used a wonderful word. It really has been an epiphany for a lot of people, because we have had, you know, presentations on pathways and so on. But I think what you brought to the table was a deep understanding and integration of pathways beyond the club. And I think you did it so effortlessly. And I think it was just amenable to everyone. So thank you, you know, cannot thank you enough. I have also to say thank you to Julie, because Julie was the person who really got me into meetings where I met you, and I've heard you several times. And I thought one day it would be good to have him talk to D71, and the occasion arose. And as I said, you did us proud today. We thank you, because, you know, it's late in Australia. So thank you for joining us. And I hope we will, there are loads of questions in the chat. So the 1 or 2, I will, if we can maybe download the chat, maybe write and ask you about a couple of them. And if you would care to share your slides with me, I would then share them. The point you didn't make, Mark, you actually have also done some wonderful educational materials. Maybe if you can give us a link to those. I did share them a year or so ago with a few people, but maybe if you can give us the link again, that would sort of add to what you've done today. So it is exactly, I think, like a few seconds before 2 o'clock. We said we would finish on time. And so it just remains to thank you again. So last word to our fantastic Zoom master. Gaia, do you want to see us out as you saw us in? So over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Grazie. And we still have 1 minute. So I would like to thank everybody. It was an amazing journey. Stay tuned. There will be more webinars. So stay tuned on our website. I hope you really enjoyed. I did. And thank you, Mark Snow, for being our special guest from Australia. And it's now, I think, 11 or 12 p.m. in Brisbane. So,
Oh,
and thank you all the other guests who were in India, Malaysia, and Philippines, and myself, I'm in Dublin, but I'm from Italy. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward for next webinar. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Thank
everyone.
you.